So I decided to take the bull by the horns and go back to school a third time, this time to become a psychiatrist who could emphasize communication at the heart of all that matters. And my brother was already a psychiatrist, my brother 14 years my senior. So I knew that it could happen. And I went back and I finished school in Detroit at Wayne State University, and eventually went to Northwestern University and got my medical degree, and then eventually got my residency and my child and adolescent fellowship. And there I was as a psychiatrist. And that's, sort of how it went. But the thing was, while I was in training, there was a paradigm shift that took place in the background. Prozac was introduced to the world while I was in training, and that altered the entire direction of psychiatry for the future. And you may recall that those were some really wild days when Prozac was initiated. There was some, fantasy that the government had about putting Prozac in the water system of Los Angeles and New York. It had to be the panacea, anything that made you uncomfortable, as if being uncomfortable was an illness.
That's a problem. Why is that a problem?
Well, at the time, that was what the issue was, is that, somehow uncomfortable is what got eventually equated to having a mental illness. If you're feeling uncomfortable, there's something wrong with you. That's what those days were all about. And that's what anxiety is now. That's what depression is now. That's what fear is now. That's what, that we now often blame the person for having experiences that are outside the norm of comfort, for being dysfunctional or out of balance. And we think that they need medication because there's something wrong with them. We'll get to that in a bit. Over the next several years, you could hear that I ended up having to diagnose literally tens of thousands of people and medicate. I've written over 100,000 prescriptions in my career. And each one of them has been sort of a heartache, sort of a soul sacrifice for me, because that's never been exactly what I knew to be the best form of healing, which I already said is in the form of communication. I did that for about 15 years. And then in 2006, began to do something which was very radical. And that was to take people off their medicine. I took my high-risk patients off of their medicine, and lo and behold, they got better, way better, predictably better. And in many cases, lost their diagnosis altogether just as a function of losing their medicine. So I began to see that the medications perpetuated the symptoms they were marketed to treat, and that the diagnosis itself was there to actually do that same process. Linked with the medication, the perpetuation of the conditions is what the industry was really after. There's no real sign of curing inside of mental illness, and the doctors are never taught how to discontinue medication. We are really just taught how to add, increase, or change medicine, and there's never a great reason to truly discontinue medicine. If things get worse, we add, change, or increase. If things get better, we actually, stay on the same. Why would you change something that's not broken? And we never really get to the algorithm of getting someone off their diagnosis or off their medicine. So this happened in 2006, and this awareness, this epiphany was very large for me. When I began to learn that, I wanted to shake everybody. I wanted to get violent about it. And in fact, I wanted to go to the top of the mountains and just scream. But that really was, I learned fairly quickly that wasn't the best way to get this communication out there, that I needed to calm down, get conversational, get to the point where I could speak, openly and honestly without being crazy about it. And so that the industry would accept me, so my peers would accept me, and really so my patients and families would accept me as well for what I was saying. I eventually was able to tone it down enough so that you can see me now actually being able to do this in a mannerful way. But over the next several years, I changed I took so many people off of medicine and off their diagnosis, eventually closing my practice in Cincinnati and beginning to do work around the world.